today we are going to focus on all the carb conscious people in the world, and we're gonna make some bread. We're gonna start real simple. We've got a big plastic tub here. So we're gonna put this on the scale and we're gonna zero it out. And we need 1,000 grams of flour. So we're gonna get this to 1,000 grams, and there it goes, 1,000. So I've got my water here. I've got 720 grams. You want that temperature between 90 and 95 degrees. And we're just gonna dump that right into our flour. And then you just do a mix. You're just gonna put your hand in there, and yeah, I washed my hands before I started. Here we are, it's all mixed up now, and we're gonna let this sit for 30 minutes. We're moving on to our next stage with our bread, where we're gonna put in the yeast and the salt. I've already done the measurements. I've got, let me double check, 21 grams of salt. We use a fine sea salt for that. And then we have 4 grams of yeast. You're just gonna wanna kind of spread that evenly over the dough. You're gonna give it a little stretch and then fold it over on itself so that those ingredients that we just put in, the salt and the yeast, kind of end up underneath. Now we're gonna do something called the pincer method. It's pretty simple. You're just gonna kind of do this along the dough to mix the ingredients. Probably do it about 5 or 6 across. So we've got our mix done. We're gonna let this sit for just a minute or two. Okay folks, so we're back and we let this sit for just a couple minutes. This mix process, adding the yeast and the salt and doing these folds and the pincer method, this whole process is about 5 minutes, okay? So you have about 3 minutes where you're doing that initial mix and blend, letting it sit for a couple minutes to settle, and then we're gonna do one more fold here, maybe 2 for the next 30 seconds, then we're gonna let it sit for about 10 minutes. We're gonna do another fold, and then we're gonna let it sit for probably about another 45 minutes and then do another fold after that. So again, don't be afraid to get your hand wet when you get in here so it's not so sticky. And when you're doing these folds, you're basically, now you can see the dough is really starting to develop. And it's good to go. We are now going to do the first fold on the bread. You're just gonna reach underneath, stretch it without tearing it, which takes a little practice, but you'll get it. And basically you kind of do it in about 4 sections. It's starting to come along nicely, and then what I like to do is pick it up and flop it over on the other side. That's what it looks like. Now we're gonna let it sit until basically it's kind of flattened, not necessarily flattened, but kind of relaxed so that it's taking up the entire bottom of the container. And once it gets to that point, it's ready for its next fold. You're gonna do that in probably the next 45 minutes to an hour, hour and a half. So let's get this last fold done and get this bread rising, this dough rising, I should say, so we can eat it later. So again, make sure you get your hand wet, and we're gonna just follow through the same process. We're gonna reach underneath, and then we're gonna pick it up, flop it down on its other side, and there you go. Let it sit for a while, we'll be back. If you take a look at what we've got now, our dough is tripled in size. It's very gassy, there's lots of bubbles in here, and we're ready to shape our loaves. So you're gonna wanna take a little flour and kind of line the rim with flour so that we can just more easily get the dough out of here. And it just kind of eases right on out of there. We're gonna be cutting this in half because we're gonna make 2 loaves of bread today. And from here, we're gonna make our loaves. Basically what you do is very similar to the folding process. You're gonna stretch, fold, and you're gonna be pulling from underneath. You're gonna pull this last one, then you're gonna flip it over, just kind of round it out. And then you're gonna wanna take it over away from your flour. But you run your fingers under it and kind of pull it towards you to tuck it in. So you're going to flour your proofing baskets just so your bread doesn't get stuck in there before you plop it in. And this one is ready to go. And you're just going to cover them with some towels. You can use paper towels, whatever it is. And they're going to sit for about an hour and 45 minutes before you're going to put them in the oven. That's when your pans are going to go in the oven because you want those cast irons to be real hot. So we've got the oven on at 475. We're gonna pop our Dutch ovens in there. They're cast iron. We're gonna heat those up. Our bread, our dough, I should say, is still in the proofing baskets rising, and we're getting closer and closer. Once we put these pans in, the bread dough will go in about 40 minutes. So, and we're finally there. We are ready to bake our bread. They've been the dough's been proofing in these baskets. We're gonna take off our towels, and what we're gonna do is just put a little flour here on our countertop. So I'm gonna jump over to the oven and bring over the cast irons. And we're just gonna kind of flop that down. All right, 30 minutes in there. Then we're gonna take those lids off and bake for another 15 to 20. Gotta keep an eye on them so they don't burn. We'll see you in a bit. We are going to take the lids off the pots now. The bread's been baking about 30 minutes. It's gonna bake another 15 to 20. All right, folks, it's the moment of truth. It's time to take the bread out. We're gonna go ahead and cut into it. And as you can see, you see all these holes. Those are our gas bubbles that we talked about earlier. Shows that we did a good job letting the dough rise and not busting all the bubbles when we were forming the loaf. And we'll see what the team thinks.